CBS, America's #1 independent television network, presents the following sports exclusive.
Stewart with time, lets it go. He's got three people down there. The ball's up in the air. Caught! Touchdown! Caught by Westbrook for a touchdown!
3 seconds left. 3rd and 10 at the SMU 41-yard line. McMahon all the way back in his own 46. Throwing for the end zone. Receivers are there. Defenders are there. It is in the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown!
Welcome to Basically a Football Show.
Week 1, college football, the most anticipated college football opening weekend in history. So many ranked matchups and a lot of upsets and a lot of things that, Greg, we were finally right about. It's week 2, basically a football show 2016. I'm Zach, that's Greg. And for once, we didn't look like idiots out of the gate. We got some things right.
Well, you know, we're usually pretty good. It's the NFL is our downfall. We're usually pretty good with the college. We don't do too bad. We do look like idiots on occasion, but we look pretty smart this week, I got to say.
Yeah. But just an incredible opening weekend of college football, starting all the way back to Thursday. On Thursday night, you had number 9 Tennessee hosting Appalachian State. Now, Appalachian State, they've moved up. They're an FBS team. They did win 10 games last season. Not half bad, but of course, who are they playing? They're in one of those lower conferences. Mm-hmm. So as Tennessee, schedule them at home. Think, well, we're Tennessee. We're ranked 9th in the country. We have a great defense. Our quarterback is going to be okay. We're going to get through this. Appalachian State led this game 13-3 at halftime.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of sweating going on in Knoxville. And really, Tennessee got their way back into it. But towards the end, Appalachian State just went so conservatively, just trying to run up the middle, trying to settle for field goals or field position, and they just it looked like. Do you remember that game last year? You know, Auburn ended up not being very good, but they opened the season against South Alabama or something like that, and they had to go to it was Jacksonville State, and they had to go to overtime, and Jacksonville State had an opportunity to win it late, and they didn't do it. They just said no, we'll play for overtime.
Yeah,
and they lost in overtime. That's what this felt like as Tennessee went ahead into the overtime and ended up beating them by just 7 points. So a really tight one there for the Vols. But
two things on this game. First off, with Appalachian State, do you blame them for trying to just get to overtime and hope that maybe they get the lucky bounce, or should they? I personally think they should have just kept the hammer down. I'm always one that if you're in position for the upset, you just got to keep going for it because. You know, you don't have the luxury of playing it safe. No.
Because in theory, the other team is supposed to beat you. And in theory, the other team can turn this thing around at any point and beat you, especially if it's supposed to be that big of a talent gap. So if you're Appalachian State or anybody that's in position for a big upset like that, go for it, man. What do you have to lose? If you lose the game, you were supposed to lose the game.
Exactly.
If you win the game, great. You're not playing for ties, you know?
See, that's my thing. It's like whatever you were doing worked to get you out to a 13-3 lead. And I don't like when you all of a sudden go, okay, you sit on the lead. I mean, when you're playing a team like Tennessee and you're Appalachian State, you can't sit on the lead. You can't play for overtime. You got to go for it, and you got to keep doing whatever was working. Now, maybe they made adjustments. Maybe I didn't watch the game. Maybe Tennessee made the proper adjustments and got everything under control. I don't know, but if they went conservative, it's their own fault that they lost. Not that they probably should have won, but, that's just – you can't do that.
Yeah, so Tennessee escapes at home. They started out the season as number 9. With the tight loss, they fall 8 spots to number 17 in the AP poll, and they fall 4 spots to 14 in the coaches poll. Maybe that's again, we talk about with this first week kind of overreactions. Maybe that's deserved. Maybe I would see them dropping a couple spots, but it's 17. They'll probably move their way back up, especially because they're an SEC team, and that's just what these teams do.
Well, that's the thing about week 1, and especially with the rankings, is that you really don't know anything going into the season. I mean, you got an idea. You know that you know the teams are going to be pretty good. That are always pretty good. But then you get down past, we even saw it with Oklahoma this week at number 3. But you get down past 7 or 8, and it's kind of a roll of the dice at that point. You just don't know what you got. So, was Tennessee overranked going into the season, or were they overlooking Appalachian State? We won't know for a few weeks. So, yeah, it could be deserved, or it was just one of those weird, fluky things. We will have to wait and see.
Yeah, there's a lot of jumping up and down in the polls, and we'll get to those.
Especially the first few weeks, yeah.
Also on Thursday night, number 19, Louisville dropped 70 on poor Charlotte. And Louisville, they moved up to 13 from 19 in the AP. On to Friday, Stanford, number 8 in the country. They opened their season against Kansas State. And wouldn't you know it, Christian McCaffrey still very good. 250 all-purpose yards as the Cardinal knocks off Kansas State, 26-13. Pretty good game, opening win there for Stanford. And not a cupcake. Kansas State's, they're not going to be very good, but at least you're not playing, again, some of these directional schools. Or if you're somebody like, let's say, number 12 Michigan State, who just played Furman. And beat them 28-13. Not an impressive opener there for Michigan State, but they get the win. And they don't move. They're 12 still this week. Baylor also dropped 55 on Northwestern State. But then to the big day, Saturday, the opening Saturday of college football. And it started early, a very early kickoff for Oklahoma and Houston, number 3, quote-unquote, number 3, Oklahoma, and the number 15 Houston Cougars. And my God, Houston is a damn good football team.
They are.
They're just a straight-up good football team. Oklahoma led 10-3 after the first quarter, but Houston really put on the gas there in the second quarter. They pulled off an 109-yard field goal return against Oklahoma. They had this freshman defensive lineman. I forget his last name. First name was Ed. I don't remember his last name. Just disrupting shit everywhere. It's actually he was the first ever 5-star recruit to go to a group of 5 school. He's from the city of Houston, wanted to stay at home, and he's going to make a big impact there for the Cougars on defense.
First one ever, really?
Yeah, first ever 5-star recruit to go to a group of 5 school.
Wow, I had no idea that. You would think that would have happened at least once over the years.
In the second half, Houston really put on the gas, 14 points in the third quarter, and they pull out and cruise to a 33-23 victory. Oklahoma exposed in week 1. And exactly how we said, we thought they were a little overranked. We said, yeah, maybe Houston could pull this off. Not only did Houston pull it off, Houston just put the foot down. They announced themselves to the college football world this season saying, hey, we are good. We are a playoff contender. And you see it in the rankings. They move up from 15 to all the way to number 6.
Okay,
and
but
that's good positioning for them.
Here's my question, though. Okay,
sure.
we talked about Oklahoma in the preview and how we thought they were overrated. And they weren't as good as people thought they were. So, and I'm not taking a thing away from Houston, but how much of it is because Oklahoma's not as good as we thought they were, and Houston's better than, you know what I mean? Do we want to get too carried away with Houston at this point, or are they really that good, I guess is my question.
I think Houston is good, is that good. But I think it's a combination of Oklahoma not being as good as the ranking said they were, as we thought. And I think Houston is that good. I think it's a combo of things. Now, what Houston needs, though, is when Oklahoma plays Ohio State in 2 weeks, they need Oklahoma to not get blown out at the very least.
Yeah, an Oklahoma win would really, really help Houston's case down the road.
Yeah, exactly. But you also see, in terms of Oklahoma, you saw this with Ohio State just 2 years ago. You can lose an early game, especially if it's to a decent school. And if you can win out the rest of your games, you'll be fine. Mm-hmm. Like when Ohio State lost to Virginia Tech in the opening week.
Yeah, and Tech wasn't even really that good that year. No. I mean, they were okay. I think they won 5 or 6 games. They weren't awful, but yeah.
Right.
Oklahoma can recover from this.
Sure. But, I mean, they're going to have to beat Ohio State. If they lose to Houston and Ohio State, then they're done. There's no point. But Houston, I mean, they need – even if Oklahoma were to lose to Ohio State, I think they need Oklahoma to eventually win the Big 12, and that will really help them in the long run of things. But being number 6, that puts them in a great spot because, again, as we look at the rankings, you still have the 2 ACC schools ahead of them. One of those 2 has to lose. You have the 2 Big 10 schools ahead of them. One of those has to lose. and that gives them ample opportunity to slide up into those top 4 spots. Again, it's just the AP poll, and again, it's early, but it's one of those things where, like, if the playoffs started tomorrow, then they could have themselves in position.
I'm just taking a real quick look at their schedule. I don't want to get too carried away on their schedule, but looking at it, Houston, all they got to do really is just stay above water until they get to Louisville, knock off Louisville, and if everything else holds to form, I think they're in.
Yeah,
because you got no reason to drop them. Well, I would say that, but then of course we've seen the committee drop teams for no apparent reason, so I don't want to get too caught up in that. But yeah, I think that they're in a real good spot. And
with this win, as long as if they can go undefeated, there's no way you can't give them the spot. It's just it's not good. And it's not like they're just some. I mean, we've seen this in the past with some of these, non-Power 5 teams where it's, they have a gimmick, or like you think of Boise State, and they had these high-powered offenses that did these kind of weird things, and they would score a bunch of points. Houston's good on both sides of the ball. They're solid on defense. The offense is very good as well. And as you see with a 100-yard kickoff return, or a field goal return, I should say, that's special teams too.
Yeah.
They beat Oklahoma in every phase of the game on Saturday, and that says something, because despite us thinking Oklahoma's overrated, maybe they're still one of the better football teams in the country.
Oh yeah, I mean even if they're not a national championship contender, they're still an 8-win, 9-win team.
Yeah,
so it's not like just because they lost and they were overrated that Houston win against them doesn't mean anything. It's still going to mean a great deal. Mm-hmm. And Houston, plus another thing Houston's got going in its favor, they didn't come into this ranked at like 25 and work their way up to 6. They were already at 15 coming into this, knocked off a power conference school and moved up to number 6. Yeah. So this isn't one of those. It isn't a Boise State thing where they made the slow ascension. They're already there. Yeah,
they're right there. They just gotta win the games.
Yeah.
But good win for Houston. Excited to see how that plays out the rest of the year. A team that maybe we had put a little too much faith in played right after them. Yeah. And another tight one up at Lambeau Field. The first ever college game played at Lambeau Field. Pretty interesting.
That surprises me too. I didn't think that would have happened at least once in 100 years, right?
Yeah. Well, Wisconsin was the home team hosting number 5 LSU. Now, Wisconsin's unranked. LSU has Leonard Fournette. You think LSU, they're going to run all over these guys. It's going to be no problem. And then, the game goes on and nobody's really doing anything. It's tight. It's 6-0 Wisconsin at halftime. LSU gets the points there in the third quarter. They're leading 14-13 going into the fourth. But LSU just can't get anything going. Leonard Fournette still goes for 138 yards. But the thing that we always pointed out about LSU really was their biggest problem. They could not throw the football.
Nope.
It was all Leonard Fournette, and as long as you could contain him, and 138 yards for him is containing him for all intents and purposes.
Yes.
You just have to be good enough and take advantage of what you're given, and that's what Wisconsin did, and they end up knocking off LSU 16-14. LSU falls all the way to 21st, and Wisconsin jumps from being unranked to number 10.
Okay, now that's
a little ridiculous.
That's a big overreaction in both directions, I think.
Yeah. Now, LSU falling, sure, but Wisconsin going up to 10 is a little nuts. But LSU was exposed for the weaknesses that they have and that we've all seen, and that's a pretty big knock.
Yeah, and you look at the stat line from this game. I mean, Fournette, 138 yards, 23 carries, no touchdowns. Mm-hmm. And then you look at the passing attack. Brandon Harris, 12 of 21, 131 yards, which, okay, when you're a run-based team, that's not the worst thing in the world, but here's the real problem.
Yep.
Average yards per pass play, 6.2.
Yeah, and not to mention killer interceptions.
And 2 interceptions, and that's the thing. And we talked about it in the preview. LSU, if they could get any semblance of a passing game, would be very tough because Fournette would be you can't game plan against him entirely, but we've seen already in week 1, guess what? They don't have a passing attack against. All you got to do is stop Fournette, and you might win the game. It's a nice win by Wisconsin, too. Very impressive.
Great win by Wisconsin. Fun fact here, too, the Wisconsin quarterback that played this game for them, Bart Houston, was named after Bart Starr. and he wins his first college game
in Lambeau Field.
Well,
how perfect is that, right?
Yeah, that's something, right?
Yeah, but the Gophers. I mean, good defense.
Gophers.
When I say the Badgers, I'm sorry, the Badgers.
They're the Badgers.
The Badgers. Sorry about that, Wisconsin. You know what? When you're an Ohio State fan, you all look the same to us. What can I say?
Man.
Sorry. But anyway, no, nice win by the Badgers, not the Gophers. I don't know if the Gophers won or not. I'm sure we'll get to them here. But good win by Wisconsin. I don't know that I'd rank them all the way at 10, but nice win.
That's a little extreme. Did you see the play at the end of the game after LSU just finally put the nail in the coffin with the interception? LSU throws the interception. Like, I don't even know where the quarterback was throwing that football. Like, there was a receiver down the sideline to the left. There was a receiver deeper on the left hash, but he didn't throw it to either of them. He threw it like in the middle of the two of them and right to the Wisconsin DB. And as the guy, he caught it and went down. And, in college, of course, when you hit the ground, you're down. The LSU lineman didn't think that or was just blinded by rage and went and just clotheslined this dude.
Yeah, it was a pretty cheap shot, to be completely honest about it.
Yeah.
I think he has to sit out a half after that. Is that what I saw what the punishment was going to be for the LSU player?
I know there's another guy that we'll get to in a minute that has to sit out a half.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of that's who maybe I'm thinking of then.
I think he has to sit out a game.
Okay.
I think that's how that
There was a couple. I mean, throughout the stuff I watched, we saw more than our share of cheap shots in college football in the first weekend, I thought.
Yeah, it's that first weekend. It's your first game against somebody else. You're just pumped up and, the big crowd will into it. I understand it, but so Wisconsin knocks off LSU 16-14. Going on concurrently with that game was another thriller and another team where we were a little bit right. UCLA, number 16 in the country, they take on a pretty big task. They go into Kyle Field, College Station, Texas A&M, the newly expanded Kyle Field, over 100,000 people there to root on the Aggies. And Texas A&M took it to UCLA early. Now, UCLA looked out of sorts. Josh Rosen was good, 343 yards, a touchdown, but most of that came late. And in between all that, he still made some boneheaded decisions. There was one play in the first half where he's going to get sacked. He's going down the ground, and he just kind of throws the football up in the air for no reason. And it goes, there's a Texas A&M player just standing there waiting for it, grabs it, run. But the Texas A&M D-line was frustrating UCLA all day. Texas A&M was up 24-9 going into the fourth quarter. It looked like they were going to cruise this thing, and then out of nowhere, UCLA just started to click. They got a turnover, and they just got a couple quick passes. Some poor defensive coverage there by A&M allows UCLA to tie this thing late. And then going into overtime, Texas A&M goes for it on 4th and 2, or 4th and goal from the 2. They get it. They stop UCLA on the next possession, and the Aggies knock off UCLA 31-24. Great win for Texas A&M. A bad loss for UCLA. And, they, despite them being down big early in this game and having to come back, they dropped at least 4 touchdown passes.
Yeah.
It was just UCLA lost this game for themselves. And, again, kind of proving what we thought about them, that when they get into a tough spot, granted it's the first game of the year and maybe the drops are just a lack of rhythm and that sort of thing. But still, a big loss for UCLA. And, Texas A&M, they move up into the rankings to where they move to 20, and UCLA drops straight out from 16 to out of the rankings after week 1.
I think that what we had here was a game between two pretty evenly matched teams.
Yeah.
I think UCLA, even at 16, I thought they were okay at 16, but I'm not a bit surprised that Texas A&M won this game. I don't even consider it an upset, even though they were unranked.
Texas A&M was actually a 3-point favorite.
Okay, yeah.
Because you're at home, that basically means that it's even and you're the home team, so you get the 3 points.
Yeah, so UCLA, though, there's one loss already. And they're going to pick up, at the very least, one more in Pac-12 play, probably more like 2 or 3, but... Now again, coming in at 16, their chances at a national title probably weren't that great to begin with, but they're out of the picture probably already at this point.
Yeah, Texas A&M was good in this game. Trevor Knight starting at quarterback for them. He played at Oklahoma previously. He looked pretty good for A&M. That D-line was great. I think the thing that really surprised me and in what is going to be the big point for UCLA going forward is, yes, Josh Rosen had a stat-wise a pretty good game. 26 of 46, 343, and he got that touchdown late to tie things up. But he started last year as a true freshman. He's a sophomore now. Some of those things he did, like the play I talked about where he's getting sacked, just take the ball and fall down, and he felt the need to just throw it up in the air for no reason for an interception. He needs to grow up. He needs to make some better decisions. He's growing this god-awful mustache, which is probably his first bad decision of the year. But when some of the mistakes he made in this game, they're acceptable if you're a true freshman in like your first 3 or 4 games at the college level. But you're a sophomore now. You're supposed to be leading this team, and for a guy that has all the raw talent in the world, people just keep praising this kid left and right. Oh, he's so great. He's going to be so good. He's going to be one of the best college quarterbacks to ever play in the game. And sure, he has the talent to do that, but his decision-making is a little subpar at this point.
Well, I wanted to bring up a guy that had all the raw talent in the world, put up impressive stat lines all the time, and didn't win a whole lot of games. And that's not a knock on Josh Rosen. I'm just saying that their history is littered with guys that have the physical tools, the stat lines, but end up losing a lot of games. Vinny Testaverde had the same type of career where he was good. He could be good, but he made a lot of dumb decisions. I'm not saying that Josh Rosen's going to be Vinny Testaverde. I'm just saying that, if you make dumb decisions when you shouldn't be making dumb decisions, you're going to become Vinny Testaverde. And I don't think he wants to do that. So, yeah, he needs to play smarter. So that's my point.
Yeah. But, again, we open up the season being right about a good team there with UCLA going down. Let's move to the other Southern California team that went on the road.
Oh, Lord.
To play an SEC team.
It looked good for a quarter.
USC number 20 facing number 1 Alabama in Cowboy Stadium in Dallas. Yeah, USC was up 3-0 after a quarter. Then Alabama showed up.
For the first quarter of that game, it really looked like USC was going to hang with them. But then you can take it from here.
Yeah, Alabama kind of switched between quarterbacks. They settled on Jalen Hurt coming in there. He was only 6 of 11, 118 yards, TDs. But he's a dynamic player. He can run the ball. He runs that option so well. And that's when Alabama really got rolling. And it's a combination of Alabama is great. Alabama just ran off points. They ended up winning this thing 52-6. The thing, I don't know if we learned too much about Alabama besides who their quarterback is, and again, they're going to be very good. We were wondering who was going to step in, and we didn't really. It wasn't too big of a concern because we knew Alabama always kind of figures it out, and lo and behold, they did. This Jalen Hurts kid looks pretty good. But the thing I want to really touch on is USC looked scared. Yeah. USC did not look like USC. They're just USC is not USC anymore. To come into that game and as soon they were up 3-0, they felt decent about themselves, but as soon as Alabama started punching them in the mouth, they looked lost, confused, and scared.
Well,
I've never seen that from a USC team.
They might have been intimidated going in. I don't know what their makeup is as far as how many underclassmen they have playing or how many returning starters they have and all that, but you can't play like that. And if a team punches you in the mouth and you go, oh, please don't hit me again, then guess what? It's 52-6 by the end of the game. And that sounds like that's what happened with the Trojans. It was something. It was because at first I'm like, hey, the Trojans might hang with these guys. And then it was just like, Jesus, Alabama just found this gear that makes them Alabama that other teams just don't have, and off they went. And it was never even a contest, really.
Yeah. I don't know what USC's problem is. Because they get kind of fed to us every year, and the narrative gets spun as well. They're past the sanctions now, and they're rebuilding, and now they're ready to go, and they have some talent, and they're going to start over, new coach. I mean, we went, Lane Kiffin came in after Pete Carroll, and yeah, he had to go through the sanctions early, but he had some teams that were still decently talented, and he did some things with them before he had to leave. Then Sarkisian comes in, and he, kind of same thing. Well, you're finally getting over the sanctions, and you have some talent, and he did a little bit here and there, but never getting kind of back to where they were supposed to be. And you went through a couple interim coaches. You get Ed Orgeron in there for a minute, and they had Clay Helton in there once before, and now a second time. I
think you kind of answered your own question there, actually. If you look at all the turnover and all the uncertainty that team has gone through since Pete Carroll left, I think that's part of the problem right there. We had Bergeron. This guy's back for a second time. We had Sarkisian come in. That's 4 coaches in how many years? When did Carroll leave? In 07?
Yeah, something like that.
9 years, 4 coaches. That's not good in college football. You can't do that. You're never going to win that way. So maybe you answered your own question. That's the problem in itself.
It's just such a strange thing to see USC just clobbered like that. I think it's their worst opening loss since like 1946 or something.
Oh, God, really?
USC began playing football in 1888. Before that game, they had only lost by 40-plus points twice. USC's 52-6 loss was his worst opening loss ever. The previous worst opening week loss for USC, 30-0, 1896. The last big matchup of Saturday night ended up being a close one. Number 2 Clemson went to Auburn, Battle of the Tigers there. Down in Alabama, a tight one. Clemson ends up winning this thing 19-13. You would have thought that Clemson would have beat Auburn a little bit more soundly, but
that's a tough place to play. I mean, Auburn's knocked off good Alabama teams in that stadium. I'm not going to penalize Clemson too much in this one. That's a really tough place to play, and you know what? And this goes back to what we talked about in the preview. You've got an experienced quarterback. They found a way to get it done. That was an opportunity for them to really Clemson, and again, they didn't Clemson, so I'm going to give them credit for that one.
Rounding out the rest of the games here on Saturday, the 2 top Big Ten teams blew out their opponents pretty easily. Ohio State 77-10 over Bowling Green. JT Barrett, a school record, he contributed to 7 touchdowns in the win, 6 in the air, 1 on the ground. Good performance there by your Buckeyes. Michigan beats up poor jet-lagged Hawaii 63-3. TCU, a weird tight game against South Dakota State. TCU had to squeak by the Jackrabbits of South Dakota State.
Right. That's what we talked about last week with the Big 12, though. I brought this up. When you really just don't bother to play defense, this is what happens. You give up 41 points to the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. And when you're giving up 41 points to a 1AA school, what do you think Baylor's going to do to you? I understand that they love their passing, wide-open offenses there in the Big 12, but if you don't play defense, anybody can beat you, including South Dakota State. Now, they didn't do it, but the fact that you gave up 41 points shows right there that you need to concentrate a little more on defense, and that's going to be a problem for that conference. Simple as that.
Number 14, Washington blows out Rutgers. They were up 24-0 after the first quarter, and they beat the Scarlet Knights 48-13. And you want to hear some nonsense? That Washington hype train has really started to get rolling. They move up to number 8.
Maybe they're legit. I don't know.
You blow out Rutgers, and that makes you the 8th best team in the country? Stop it.
You know, honestly, I got to say that between the 2 overreactions we've had, I think I'm respecting Wisconsin's jump to 10 a little bit more than Washington's jump to number 8, just because of the quality of their opponents.
Yeah.
That's the thing, though. You know, the writers get on a team that they love, and here we go.
Yeah. They're setting up, I think what the AP is also kind of doing is they're setting up a tight matchup for Stanford and Washington, because now Stanford moves up to 7, Washington's 8. You have them next to each other. You have Clemson number 2, Florida State's number 3, Ohio State's number 4, Michigan's number 5. They're kind of pairing these schools together.
Yeah.
Kind of, I don't know if they're trying to force something. You know, and maybe it just looks like that because obviously it's a mashup of everybody's different polls. But still, it's kind of funny. Let's see. Iowa gets their first big win of the year, 45-21 over Miami. Georgia, Nick Chubb comes in, 32 carries, 222 yards, and 2 TDs as they knock off North Carolina.
The Tar Heels look good in this game. I think that's going to be a pretty good football team this year. Will they challenge Florida State or Clemson? Probably not, but
give them a scare, maybe.
Yeah, I was impressed that the Tar Heels look pretty good. And we asked the question last week with Georgia, Was it bad coaching or whatever? Well, we still really don't kind of know yet because these are two evenly matched teams, and it was a pretty good game. So we'll have to wait and see. I think the jury is still out on Georgia.
Yeah, really a great comeback performance for Nick Chubb, too, coming off that injury last year. And the other great thing about this game, the uniform matchup.
Oh,
you get just rally against the North Carolina Tar Heel Blue. That's good.
Best one of the week, I thought, right?
Teams really need to do that more. It's the one thing that American football can pull from the other football, soccer, where you have primary jerseys until you need them otherwise.
This game looked fantastic, I thought. Probably my favorite uniform matchup of the week. How great would Ohio State-Michigan look if they both wore their dark jerseys?
Oh, God, yeah.
The red against the blue. We see it with the USC-UCLA. It looks outstanding. Some teams it doesn't work because they're just too similar looking. Like you couldn't have Ohio State and Nebraska both playing their home jerseys. You wouldn't be able to tell who's who.
Yeah.
But when you've got the clear contrast there, I don't see the harm in it.
USC-Alabama couldn't have done it, but could you have just picture in your head UCLA and their light blues going up against Texas A&M in their maroons?
That would look fantastic.
That'd look great.
Yeah.
But that leads us into the 2 extra games that we get in these Labor Day weekend.
Oh, boy.
On Sunday nights, number 10 Notre Dame went down to Austin to take on the Texas Longhorns, and it was a hell of a football game. It's going to be tough to top this game as the season goes on in terms of fight. Both teams were matching touchdown for touchdown early. Just both teams throwing the ball down the field, and Notre Dame trying to switch between its 2 quarterbacks, which I think was ultimately their downfall in this thing. Because if Notre Dame had stuck with one of the quarterbacks and really kind of got some momentum going, maybe they can get a lead at some point during regulation and knock off Texas. But they go back and forth. And to be honest, I mean, Texas did the same thing too. They switched between Shane Buckley and Ryan Swoops.
Yeah, but the thing that Texas did differently, though, is that Swoops was in as part of a package.
Yes.
That was, I mean, I don't know if Notre Dame planned to go with the 2 quarterback thing, or if that's just the way it turned out, but Texas did it specifically. What did they call it? The 18-wheeler package, which I thought was a really cool name for it.
Yes.
And so Texas had a method to their madness, where I don't think Notre Dame did necessarily.
After watching this game, Notre Dame needs to go with DeShone Kizer going forward. And
my thoughts exactly.
Despite Zaire being the more experienced, little older guy, and the only reason that he lost his job last year was because he got injured. But it's one of those things where the guy gets the opportunity, and he's better than you. And in college football, you don't have the opportunity of waiting around.
Well, and look at Texas to give you a perfect example. Bushell's a freshman, right?
Yeah.
And Swoops is a senior.
Yeah.
And this could have been a problem, but from everything I watched the interviews after the game and the way they were talking, Swoops said, "I'm going to do what's best for the team and let the freshmen start." And look what happened. They went out and got a nice big win against Notre Dame week 1 of the first week of the season.
Notre Dame, they fall 8 spots to number 18. Texas jumps into number 11.
Okay, that's another overreaction.
That's an overreaction, but is Texas football back?
I think it's back. I don't think it's back to number 11 back.
Do you think this is a game that's a big enough win to save Charlie Strong's job for the rest of the year, or does he still have to perform into the Big 12 schedule?
If they have a good season, I'm going to say 8 or 9 wins or better. He probably stays, but anything less than that, and all bets are off.
And for Notre Dame, I mean, when we were looking at their schedule at the beginning of the year, this wasn't one of the games we were going to allow them to lose.
No.
But it's tough because it's same thing as we said with Ohio State. Say this is their one loss this year, and Texas ends up being ranked and being very good, as it looks like they might be. Do you give them the benefit of the doubt and still put them in the I mean, would you give them a playoff spot if they're 11-1 and their one loss was the Texas?
Depends on who else is there and what else is available.
Yeah.
I think that they've got a good chance. I think if there's a year that they could get in with one loss, it's this year, because I really don't think that the Big 12 or the Pac-12 is going to have a champion with one loss or less. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah,
Stanford won it last year with 2 losses, right? The Pac-12.
Yeah,
I just don't see it. So that's Notre Dame's hope, and that. But again, that's what they can't lose again. I'll say that one more and they're done.
Right. Well, especially because of the not being in a conference and no conference champion thing.
Yeah,
I mean they have an even thinner margin of error than most teams, and for a team that's as good as Notre Dame could be or may end up being. It might be a little unfair, but it's the way that the system is working now. And Maybe they'll eventually force Notre Dame to join a conference.
I don't know why they've waited so long at this point. What's the holdup?
It's because it's the attitude of it.
Well, I think that, and they've got their own personal network with NBC. But short of that, it's just you're hurting your own chances every year. Yeah. Like let's put them in the Big Ten, and everything else remains the same, and they come out of that with one loss, they're in. There's not even a question.
Yeah,
and it just seems silly to me to kind of vote against your own interests the way that they constantly do by staying out of a conference.
Yeah, it makes them too much money as of right now. But if they keep getting screwed over by the system, Notre Dame, as much as they like money and as much as they like their prestige, part of their prestige is that they were national champions regularly back in the day.
Yeah.
So if they need to get back up to that point, they may have to just bite the bullet and do it at some point.
Yeah, I was going to say, money's nice, having your own network's nice too, but you know what? It really helps with recruiting, national championship trophies. Those do a good job too.
And say, like, if they join the Big Ten, the Big Ten has its own network.
Yeah.
If you were to join the ACC's working on getting its own network. So it's, that whole landscape will change here soon.
There's just such a natural fit for the Big Ten. I mean, think about all the great matchups you would get. And you would get Notre Dame, Michigan back.
Yeah.
Which I just think is a shame that game's gone now. And, you get Ohio State. They'd play Michigan State, which I think they used to play every year too.
Yeah.
And, now they're the ACC thing. I mean, I get it. And that's the thing, too. They're in a conference, I think, in every sport except football.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're in. They were in the Big East for everything before, and now they've moved to the ACC for everything. So it's a stupid thing, and it'll probably change at some point here.
If they want to have a little more room to work with to be in the college football playoff picture, they're going to have to.
Yep. And making an independent schedule is hard.
Yeah.
Because once these teams get in conference, they have commitments.
Yep.
That's why they can't play Michigan anymore, because it just doesn't work out for their schedule.
Yeah, which is a shame. All right, anyway.
And finish off this Labor Day weekend of football on Monday. Number 4 Florida State, number 11 Ole Miss. Early on, this looked like Ole Miss was going to run away with it, and Florida State was going to be exposed in week 1. They had a freshman quarterback starting, DeAndre Francois. They had made some really kind of bad mistakes early. When we were recording the NFL preview, we were watching.
We were laughing at these guys.
Yeah, and Dalvin Cook, their star receiver, or star running back / receiver, he had caught the ball and he was running into the end zone untouched, and he just knocked the ball off his knee and out of bounds. And Florida State ended up having to settle for a field goal on that drive instead of just waltzing into the end zone for a touchdown. Didn't hurt them, though, as even though they were down 22 points at a point there in the first half. Florida State comes out of halftime with a 23-point third quarter, holding Ole Miss on offense as well. 23-0 in that third quarter, and they surge to a 45-34 win. It's something that Florida State has done in big games in the past few years, where they go into halftime, and a lot of people regard Jimbo Fisher as one of the best halftime adjustment guys in college football, and it shows in a game like this. Ole Miss, all credit to Ole Miss. They show that they are a legit team. I had some questions about them at number 11. I didn't think they were enough to be up there. They're a good team. Make no bones about it. They're going to be a very good team, and they could potentially make a mess of things in the SEC if they can perform to their potential. But on the flip side of that coin, while Florida State looked pretty bad early, they showed what they can be and why they deserve to be number 3 in the country and a national title contender. They have all the talent, and when it clicks like it did there, coming out of halftime, they're going to be almost impossible to stop.
They really impressed me. I'll tell you, it was such a blowout in the first half that I left and was gone for about 45 minutes. Got home and I went, "What the hell happened here?" And was it Brent Musburger calling this game? No, it was
Fowler and Herbstreit.
Right.
Yeah.
Fowler even said, he goes, "If you stepped away for a minute, you're probably wondering what happened." And I went, "Well, yeah, what did happen?" I mean, it was just amazing. And the Florida State, last year we were kind of down on them. We thought they weren't probably as good as people thought they were. This year, I'm kind of all in on this team. I think that's a really, really good football team. I think they're going to be a real serious contender all the way through.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the question we had when it came to them versus Clemson. Was Florida State has all this talent on offense, but Clemson is loaded on offense.
Yeah.
And, there was some question at quarterback for Florida State. DeAndre Francois came in and played extremely well.
Yep.
33 of 52, 419, 2 touchdowns. All the wide receiver talent. Dalvin Cook's a very good running back. When those two teams meet later in the season, that is going to be a barn burner. That is going to be a fun football game to look forward to down the road with Florida State, Clemson. But big win there by the Seminoles to kick off their season. They move up to number 3, and Ole Miss falls to number 19.
Yeah, I don't know if I drop Ole Miss that far off that loss.
Yeah, I would have kept them. They were at 11, maybe make them 15 or something like that.
Yeah. But it was a great football game. Really, the Labor Day specials, Texas, Notre Dame, and Florida State, Ole Miss. Wow, a couple of classics right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Great weekend first weekend of college football. Best
great
ever.
weekend of football. Teams that moved up into the rankings: Texas A&M moved up to 20, Baylor jumped in at 23, Oregon State at 24, and Miami moved in at 25, as well as we already talked about Wisconsin moving up to 10 and Texas up to 11. The top 5, Alabama, still number 1 in the country, 54 first-place votes. Clemson, number 2 with 2 first-place votes. Florida State, 3 with 4 first-place votes. Ohio State, number 4, no first-place votes. And Michigan, number 5 with 1 first-place vote. Houston right behind them with 6. Stanford, Washington, Georgia, Wisconsin, rest of your top 10. But that's college football this week. That's Greg. I'm Zach. Follow us on all of our platforms. And get ready for some NFL football this weekend and have a good one.
Yes, Overreaction Tuesday coming up.
Good evening and welcome, everybody. I'm Kirk Herbstreit along with Brent Musburger.